My name is Carlos Bravo. I'm a Cloud Alliances Director at Canonical. My job is to extend everything that is integration between our products, which means Ubuntu, and the different services on AWS. All right. So also it includes improving user experience. So any feedback is welcome. Pass by to our booth. So let me tell you about a little bit about Canonical, because we have a lot of people that pass by to our booth saying, hey, what is Canonical? Is this a different Ubuntu distribution? And the funny question is, no, this is the official Ubuntu distribution. What Canonical does is to coordinate with thousands of developers all over the world, package everything, test everything, and making available for everyone on different ways, different mechanisms. Okay, so every time that you get an ISO for your computer, or you launch an EC2 instance on AWS, you are using our products. And why do we do that? Because you know that Ubuntu is for free, right? Because at Canonical, we really, really love open source. We believe that open source is the base for innovation and inclusion, right? Because it allows everyone to stand on giant shoulder and build on top of that, you know? So it creates inclusion, as I mentioned, and enable to create innovation all over the world, right? So everyone can reuse and start building applications on top of that. And Ubuntu has been one of the main ways that we can give you that experience, that we can deliver you access to open source software. As you see here, on 2004, we released the first version of Ubuntu, which was not like how we see it today, but it was our way to let people to access to technology, to access to internet, for example, everywhere without any fee, all right? And we extended these benefits to the server world on 2005. And a lot of things happened after that time, but on 2012, we officially became partners with AWS. And that was a big milestone because we started to co-engineer Ubuntu for running even better on AWS, optimized kernels, cloud init for integration with the init process. There is a lot of effort behind that. And we have become today available on all the major public clouds. We are the desktop choice for developers, for machine learning, for IoT and robotics. For example, we have Ubuntu Core also there. We are present on telco, and also we're publishing LTS containers. I don't know if you are aware about that, but we also package containers for you, and they follow the same strict standards as Ubuntu. But having access to open source software comes with a lot of challenges because it's not enough. If you are building professional applications, if you are a company that really cares about security, nobody wants to get hacked, in other words. You need to be careful, you know? It's not just getting open source software. According to Synopsys, in a security risk analysis that they did on 2020, out of all the code they analyzed, 99% of the code contained open source software, which is good. We like that, right? But the bad news is that 75% of those code bases contain risk vulnerabilities, security vulnerabilities, right? And the reasons were, I mean, if you check the study, it's very interesting. The reason there is because people don't often update those packages. You know, once you pull some packages, you build your applications, you build it on the cloud or any other service, and then you're good to go. And no, that's the answer. And on the container world, it is even worse. This is an analysis done by Unit 42 from Palo Alto Network. The next talk that is happening here. On containers, the situation is even more complex because, as you know, containers are based on several layers. Then you put your software on top, packages, and so on. But once you deploy a container, it becomes an immutable asset. You don't log into the container to just pull an update. You know, that's a bad practice. You need to rebuild everything. So you need to have pipelines. You need to be monitoring all the software that comes inside. So that comes to the second point about, the second challenge about managing open source software is about maintenance. And maintenance is a two-way road, right? One side is from the vendor, how the vendor is supporting your application, and the other is how you are maintaining your application. So this is another chart that is come from Snake, also somewhere here. And they did a snapshot on 2021 of official Docker Hub container images, all right? So Node, Postgres, NGINX, and once you deploy one of these containers, you will already running with security vulnerabilities, right? So what I'm showing this is because every time that you are even pulling software from a reputable source, you need also to run your updates and do your due diligence and check for vulnerabilities. And if you are comparing applications on published on container images, you can see that canonical container images, which, we are also providing Postgres, NGINX, Apache, and so on. We are replicating the same mechanism that we use for Ubuntu to keep it up to date, right? So you can see that once you grab a container image from Canonical, you have less work to do because they are already updated. But that brings us to these questions regarding your source, your vendor of open source software. You need to realize how fast are they delivering patches, because every day, there are new vulnerabilities that affect some components of the software. So you need to check, for example, how fast these fixes get available to the source. It's not only how fast they fix it, but also the availability for you. Also, how long the vendor is supporting your application. Because also, for example, you can be using today NGINX, but that version could go potentially end of life, and you don't know when, or you should know when. So that comes also with are the release cycles known and committed by the vendor. Sometimes you don't know when a new version is going to come, so you cannot plan accordingly to that. And also extended support. Not every time you can be monitoring and planning how to rebuild your application because a new version is coming. Sometimes you just need to buy some time, literally. And from your side, on the side of the maintenance that you have to do, is how are you keeping track of updates? Do you have a single source where you can see CVEs and versions, upgrades, for example? How are you applying them? Sometimes I still see clients that they don't have, I see customers that they don't have automation pipelines for building their containers. And sometimes you really need to be building containers as a daily basis. And how are you planning major version upgrades, like the example that I mentioned for NGINX? And finally, if you are looking for a vendor for getting your open source packages, you need to be sure that if something happens, you have someone to call or to file a ticket in a system, for example. Because if you can go directly to the source of the developers that are maintaining a package, but in the end, if they cannot provide you that support with an SLA, that could be tricky. Then the third part of managing open source is about leveraging on best practices and certifications and compliance in general. You may be or may not be in an industry regulated where you need FIPS or FedRAMP compliance as a total HIPAA, PCI, ISO. But for example, as we saw in yesterday's keynote, following FedRAMP, even if you are not, even if it's not needed in your industry, if you follow FedRAMP, you are following already good practices for keeping everything safe. So the rule of thumb is follow good practices, follow CIS, the Center of Internet Security, for example, good practices for hardening your servers, and also find providers that will help you to get open source compliant with that, right? Which is not that easy. So what Canonical has for this? We have Ubuntu Pro. So Ubuntu Pro is like an umbrella term. It's like an upgrade to the regular Ubuntu that you already know. Ubuntu Pro comes as a solution for all of these problems. So you may already be familiar with the Ubuntu LTS release cycle. every 2 years, we release a new LTS version. LTS is the long-term supported version. So, so we are ensuring you that at least for 5 years, you are going to get all the security patches for all the packages that are related with the operating system. Okay? But the interesting thing is that Ubuntu Pro extends that support from 5 years up to 10 years of support. So you really don't need to plan cycles so shortly. And also, the good news is that we're extending the support up to almost 30,000 packages, because we are including the universe also. And what do I mean about the universe? It's not really the universe, but it's our third-party open source repository. So everything that is available on Ubuntu for you for install is security supported by us. And I'm talking about these applications. All right? So if you grab an NGINX version from our repositories on Ubuntu Pro, we are ensuring you that you're getting for 10 years, you're getting security patches for that. All right? So it's like a relief if you are getting open source software. Same with Python runtimes. If you're running Go, Java, PHP, or Node.js, for example, which is trickier. So this is a strong and bold commitment from our part, but we really need that this is the way forward for letting people to really use open source in professional environments. And regarding us and our relationship with AWS, as I mentioned before, we have been already, we have a relationship for more than 10 years. We co-engineer every kernel whenever there is a new version or new feature on AWS. We're available in every instance type or almost every instance type for the day one. We validate them with AWS. And we're available as a native product on EC2 and also on EKS. So you can run your Kubernetes also on top of EKS. So if you need, for example, FIPS on EKS, you can run worker nodes, Ubuntu worker nodes on FIPS mode, and then deploy a FIPS container and so on. We are Graviton certified. We're a launch partner of Graviton. And we also have our LTS container images on ECR. Okay, so you can see that our footprint is always growing. I hope that for the next year we will have more icons here. And Ubuntu Pro is on the marketplace. So if you need to test it, it's a pay-as-you-go offer. So you just launch it, test it, play with it, and then you can even stop it and you stop paying. So wrapping up about managing open source software, one important thing is taking care of provenance, where your packages are from vendor's perspective and also from the repositories, okay? Because you don't need your packages to be tampered, for example. Also, it's about support and maintenance. How are the support models for the vendors in the packages, release cycles, and so on. Then you need to have good tools for monitoring CVEs, monitoring security updates. Amazon has 2 tools that are very good for that. One is AWS Inspector. The other is SSM Patch Manager, who will scan your machine, tells you packages that are outdated, and it will help you to update them at scale. And also leverage on good practices and compliance always. This is a very good practice. Get certification like CIS, get hardening with those rules and so on. And that's it. If you have any question, you can raise your hand or pass by to our booth and talk with us. We are at the opposite side of the hall.